So we just recently got some big news from the UFC, and that is that they have found an opponent to replace Rafael Fiziev at UFC Rio. As we all know, it was supposed to be Fiziev versus Charles, and that was an interesting stylistic matchup. But this one, to me, this is a hardcore fans kind of fight, man. This is a hardcore fans kind of fight, and I'm actually more excited about this fight than the Fiziev fight. I'm just being real, man. Like, stylistically, this is a super intriguing matchup between Charles Oliveira and now enter Mateusz Gamrot. And I always want to call this guy Matthew. I don't know why I want to call him Matthew Gamrot. He looks like a Matthew to me, man. Look at that little smirk. He's like, yeah, call me Matthew, dog. Call me Matt. But for real, man, shout out to both of these guys, and shout out to the UFC for making this happen, right? Whenever, a main event falls apart, it's not always super easy getting, these top-ranked guys to step in on short notice, and all these people out there. Charles Oliveira, dog, he's ducking. How in the world could you call Charles Oliveira a duck? This is a guy that stepped in there against Ilia Topuria, one of the most ferocious power hitters in the sport right now, and also a guy that was the champion that stepped in there against the pound-for-pound top guy in the sport, who I think is the pound-for-pound number one, in Islam Makhachev, who just might be the GOAT by the time it's all said and done. Charles Oliveira is no duck, dog, so watch how you talk about Charles Oliveira, man. But seriously, this is a super compelling matchup. Stylistically, this is super interesting because my guy Matthew, the gamer, he's the real BMF of the UFC. I'm calling Mateusz Gamrot the BMF, right? Give him a belt. Come on, let's start something. Let's give Mateusz Gamrot some sort of belt, man. This guy's a BMF, will fight anybody. If Matt Gamrot could fight every weekend, he would. He'd fight at every single UFC event, and he doesn't care who it is. Because a lot of people there are ducking and dodging Gamrot. Now, stylistically, right, it sounded like Charles was like, listen, I was preparing for a dangerous, fast Muay Thai striker like Fiziev, and we all like him watching Fiziev fight, man. He's super fun to watch, and, I love watching Rafael Fiziev. Heal up, champ, because I want to see that guy back in there, man. And, it gets scary with the injuries, right, because they keep seeming to pile up for Fiziev, and it sounds like it was something pretty significant, considering this was a massive opportunity for Rafael, and he's someone that the UFC is clearly trying to push. He's fun to watch, coming off of a big win over Bahamondes. So a big opportunity like this, he's not going to pull out of a fight of this kind of magnitude. And listen, the questions are there, right? Charles Oliveira, it sounded like he was trying to kind of sneak his way out of this one. So we had a lot of people saying he's ducking, he's dodging, but at the end of the day, he stepped in there against Ilia and Islam. This guy's not ducking anybody. Gamrot, he's the guy that when everyone looks around this weight class, they act like they don't know who he is. They act like they've never heard of him. They act like they've never seen a fight. And every single lightweight has watched a Gamrot fight. That's why they all want absolutely nothing to do with him, because he's a bitch to deal with in the octagon. Not him. I'm not calling him a bitch. I'm saying his style it's miserable. It's awful. I wouldn't want to fight Gamrot either. I'm being real. How annoying. Relentless gas tank, relentless pace. Right, he's probably in this weight class right now. There's no Islam. We have Arman in there. In terms of straight MMA wrestling, Gamrot might be the guy. He might be the top dog in that department. So we'll break down this fight. I'll talk about this. But Gamrot, he's a BMF, man. He's absolutely a BMF. His fights don't come about too often because he's got to fight guy. He should be fighting some of the top guys in the weight class, and no one wants to go in there and risk it against what is an annoying matchup and Matty Gamrot, man. So the gamer, he's back in there. Big opportunity. Happy for him, to step in there, because we'll see if he can get it done against Charles Oliveira. Super compelling stylistic matchup, man. So we'll talk a little bit about it. But first, I got to talk about a couple things. These pick-me guys in the lightweight division right now, right? We got Charles on here, but now he's got a matchup. Patricia Pimblett, Tattoo Dan, Justin Gaethje, Arman Sarukian, Ilia Topuria, which again, I feel like the UFC is probably trying to strategically use him for when the Paramount deal kicks in. Where are all these guys, man? Sitting around, Dana, pick me, Dana, pick me, Dana, pick me, look over here, woo, give me a title shot, pick me, Dana, pick me, Hunter. I just got off the phone with Hunter, man. That's why I envision from all these guys. I just got off the phone with Hunter, man. We had a good conversation about me fighting for a title shot. Come on, lad. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm next for the title, lad. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't know, man. That was my Patty Pimblett. I gave it a shot. But listen, all these guys are sitting around, pick me, Dana. I want a title shot. And we got Gamrot out here who wants to fight literally every weekend. So, like I said, Happy that Gamrot is stepping up to the plate. And Charles Oliveira literally was knocked out back in June. Is going to be turning around, which a lot of us feel is way too soon. And whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, right? I'm not the biggest fan of guys making a quick turnaround after being brutally KO'd like that, and especially the first time in the career of Charles Oliveira. But he's turning around faster than basically all these other guys here. What the hell is going on in the lightweight division? We have all of these guys are incredibly talented, man, and so fun to watch. I want to see them back in there, whether it's their fault, the UFC. I want the lightweight division moving. This is getting absolutely ridiculous. So now we got Oliveira versus Gamrot. So like I said, this doesn't pertain to Charles Oliveira, but all these other guys, give me a title shot, give me this, give me that. Guys like Gamrot, they're what make the lightweight division fun, willing to step up and fight anybody. Now, let's talk about this fight, man. I had to throw some shade in there. But listen, Charles Oliveira, a lot of his fans out there, they're saying that, listen, we all got a soft spot for Charles Oliveira. The blonde hair, the story, right? He's a fun guy to watch. The most prolific finisher in UFC history. One of the most dangerous guys the sport has ever seen, right? And Charles Oliveira, this isn't a walk in the park for Charlie, man. Like, people are out there acting like, whoa, we really dodged what here. Phew. Just go ahead and give us the W here. This is a walk in the park at UFC Rio because Gamrot's stepping in on shorter notice. And, Charles was didn't sound like he was super, intrigued to take this fight because there were conversations about it being St. Denis. And then St. Denis like, we respect Charles. So basically, we're not taking the fight here on a shorter notice. And okay, whatever. And Charles was preparing for a striker. Well, now he's got a totally different kind of matchup here. And, I wouldn't read into that too much, right? But it's the fact of who Gamrot is and the style that he presents that this isn't just a walk in the park for Charles, man. I don't think it is. I don't think it is whatsoever. And if people are acting like this victory's already decided, like Gamrot's some sacrificial lamb being thrown in there for Charles to slaughter to get back in the win column, right? Maybe that ends up happening. Like, Charles just shows levels here, but Gamrot's a pain in the ass to deal with, man. He is. His style is annoying to deal with. It's hard. He's got a very, very hard style to deal with. So you got to come in with a very particular set of skills, right? Like Liam Neeson, you really, really got to dot your I's and cross your T's when you step in there with Gamrot, right? So this isn't some walk in the park for Charles, man. Wake up. All right, so for the people out there saying that this is just some layup for Charles, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that whatsoever. And one of the big things that is getting people so excited, that are out there, in full support of Charles Oliveira to win this is, but Gamrot isn't a finishing threat, bro. And listen, over his past several fights, no, Gamrot hasn't been finishing anybody. And since he's been in the UFC, most of his fights are decision victories. I can't fight you on that. But if you go on Tapology and you look at his fights, he's got 8 wins by knockout, 5 by submission, and 12 decisions. Right, so to say that this guy hasn't finished anybody, he's got 0 finishing potential whatsoever, whatever you want to say, this guy has finished people before. He hasn't. He's finished some people in the UFC. Now, given those guys are not nearly as high level as Charles Oliveira, but given that Charles is coming off of a KO loss, man, right, is he going to bounce back this same? We got those questions. I expect Charles to bounce back and act like it basically never happened, but still, if that chin is cracked and there's a huge crack in it and a guy with a little bit of sting, doesn't have a ton of power, but does have a little bit of sting, right? And we've seen guys before. How many people thought that someone like Usman was going to knock out Masvidal? You don't have your hand up because I don't think anyone saw that coming. Now, I'm not saying that Gamrot is Masvidal, but you get my point. When you're worried about the level changes in the takedowns, it opens up the striking. We've seen Gamrot sting some guys. We have. Now, I put Charles's resume here because obviously Charles is the much more dangerous guy, but don't sleep on Gamrot's finishing ability. I know that sounds crazy, and I'm not trolling. I'm serious, man. Given a guy who's coming off of the first brutal KO of his loss, or most brutal KO loss of his career, I don't know. I got some questions. But to say that Gamrot has no ability to finish anybody is absolutely ridiculous. Now, is it super likely? No, it's not. Right, but Gamrot is 8-3 in the UFC, man. Right, so people are just writing him off, right? And it's kind of crazy that Guram got a win over him, right? That was back when we all were super high on Guram Kutateladze, beat him by split decision, but he knocked out Scott Holtman. We'll beat him up on the ground, right? Got a submission victory over Jeremy Stevens, finished Diego Ferreira, right? Submission into some strikes in round 2, beat Arman Sarukian by decision. How well has that aged? I know that was a couple years ago if they run that one back, which Arman didn't want that smoke, which to a degree, Arman really shouldn't be fighting back at all, right? He had his mess up at UFC, 311, right, where he pulled out of the Islam fight. We know the UFC, everyone's kind of holding that against Arman, but the point is if they ran that one back, I feel like Arman might be able to get that done this time around. But either way, Gamrot has a victory over him. He does. And then he lost to Beneil Dariush, right? Is Dariush a similar style to Charles Oliveira, right? I'm not saying that they're the same fighter on the feet, but stylistically, right? Dariush is a southpaw, but he's got the jiu-jitsu. Solid takedown defense. He gave Gamrot some problems, right? He beat Jalen Turner by a split decision. Beat Rafael Fiziev, right? But there was the injury on the side of Fiziev. Then he goes out there and dominates RDA, right? Loses a crazy split decision back and forth at 305 against Dan Hooker, right? That was a chaotic fight, man. Super close. Really, really close fight, right? The more damaging shots were on the side of Hooker, right? So I feel like that's why he got, the nod there. But that was really close, right? And then he's coming off of a victory back in May against Ludovic Klein. So Gamrot is not a scrub, man. People are out here disrespecting the hell out of Gamrot. He has earned this opportunity, dude. 8-3 in the UFC, that's pretty impressive. For a guy that's getting ducked and dodged left and right. He's got a victory over Arman, a victory over Jalen Turner, a victory over Fiziev, even though, there was the injury. Still, counts as a W. Beat RDA, beat what I think is a pretty good guy in the UFC in Ludovic Klein. Good striking. So now we end up in the position of me breaking down this fight and not enough yapping on all that. But the point I wanted to make is Gamrot has earned this opportunity. I'm happy he's getting this opportunity. And yes, it is on short notice. So is Gamrot, this is going to be a 5-round fight, obviously. It's a main event. How does his cardio hold up? I imagine his cardio will be just fine. Gamrot strikes me as the type of guy where he is constantly in the gym working, right? We know he trains with Dustin Poirier at American Top Team. Gamrot's one of those guys that it's like, okay, I'm not real big on the microphone. I don't have the most exciting fighting style. So when I get my opportunity, I have to make the most of it and leave no doubt because I'm not going to be getting any favors from the UFC. I feel like that is the mindset of Gamrot, man. True BMF mentality, right? Is his fighting style BMF? No, right? It's not anything super flashy, but it is like I said in the beginning of the video, a bitch to deal with. It is super hard to deal with. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at Charles Oliveira. We all know Charles by now. Good Muay Thai, right? Good knees, good elbows, right? And I feel like his approach that he had against Ilia Topuria was terrible for a fight against Ilia, which is why I picked Ilia to knock him out in the first round. That's a disaster to do that against a precision power puncher like Ilia. But the game plan that he had for Ilia is probably what he should look to do against Gamrot. Overwhelm him, get in his face, look to throw those elbows. Because if you're Charles Oliveira, right, outside of getting clipped by some sort of shot that you don't see, I don't think Gamrot submits Charles Oliveira. I'd truly be stunned if that happens. If he TKOs him, I wouldn't say that I'm super shocked given that we just saw Charles get brutally KO'd. But I still don't think Gamrot finishing Oliveira is very likely. Right, but we know Charles will crash the boards. He'll move forward, get in your face, because I don't think he's going to be very afraid here. He knows he's going to get taken down. And what do we know? Charles Oliveira, elite jiu-jitsu, man. His guard is as dangerous as it gets. But that could be a problem. That could be a problem, especially in a fight like this where Gamrot is going to relentlessly move forward, throw some output just to get, to be able to get to your hips, be able to take you down. And Gamrot's pretty good out in space and he's good up against the fence, man. He has options to be able to get you to the floor, but it's kind of Merab-esque to where he doesn't have the greatest of control. We see at times he can control guys, catch him in a scramble, find a submission, land some decent shots on the ground. But I think he's going to have a hard time controlling Charles. But the issue is when you have such a good guard and you are so good with your submission game, Charles tends to accept being on his back. We saw that against Arman Tsarukyan, but we saw Charles Oliveira, he was threatening, Arman with some dangerous submissions. Right? I know Gamrot, it's more of a marauding, push the pace, just continuing to put you in this blender of wrestling. But I can see a scenario where Charles just kind of ends up on his back and accepts some of these positions and he just loses a decision to Gamrot here. I think that that's pretty likely, man. I do. I really do. Given that we see Charles not have a ton of urgency, but he's got 5 rounds to work with. Right? A 5-round opportunity here from Gamrot, shorter notice. Like I said, I don't think that that's really going to impact him. He's a guy that's always training. But on the feet, to me, it's not close. I think while Charles is defensively irresponsible, he is clearly a better striker than Matt. I feel like we could all agree on that, right? Charles is a dangerous right hand, good short left hook, right? Good knees. And I feel like a big weapon for Charles in this fight is going to be the elbows. As Gamrot steps into range, boom, crack him with an elbow, split him open, deter him, right? Land some knees in close. Charles will pressure him, land those leg kicks, try to work the base of Gamrot, make it a little bit harder for him to kind of push off, right? That's a great way to attack a wrestler. Throw those, combinations to the, throw them right at the chest line. I feel like that's what we're going to see Charles do, throwing those shots right to the chest area, trying to deter some of the shots of Gamrot, threatening with some knees. Front kicks up the middle. Charles has got good front kicks. Try to bury him into the breadbasket, keep Gamrot off of him. But I feel like the low kick, that calf kick that Charles throws is going to be a weapon here. Try to sweep out the base of Gamrot. So I think that this is a much more competitive fight than what a lot of people might think, man. I know that there's a lot of people that are high on Gamrot as well. I've been seeing that on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call that platform. Right, and a lot of people, they're just writing Gamrot off. They're like, this is an easy W for Charles. Gamrot's not dangerous. And like I said, the minute you think someone's not dangerous, they could go out there and show us otherwise, especially when Charles is coming off of a brutal KO loss. All that being said, Charles Oliveira, I think, wins this fight. Now, does he find a finish here? Maybe he does. I feel like Charles is going to come out motivated here, man. I feel like he's getting towards the end of his career. Maybe he's got one last run in him. I'm not saying he's going to be the champion again, but I feel like Charles, he's going to go out here and put on a statement. I feel like it might be rough early. I think he's going to invest with the front kicks. I think he's going to meet Gamrot in the pocket with the elbows whenever Gamrot crashes in. I feel like those leg kicks are going to be not a secret weapon, but are going to be like the top weapon for Charles here. Try to take away the base of Gamrot, make it harder to plant and shoot those shots. And I just feel like I feel like at any moment Charles can finish this fight, because if you are a good wrestler and you're trying to entangle yourself with a guy as good as Charles Oliveira with the submission game, it just feels like you're asking for some sort of problem. It just feels that way. And we've seen throughout the career of Charles Oliveira, especially later on here, he's became more of a, he's really worked on his wrestling. His wrestling's really improved. Now, he wasn't able to finish Michael Chandler, which, again, not a great look considering what Pimblett just did to him, but still he dominated him with the grappling. We've seen Charles's wrestling improve. He's going to have to counter wrestle here. He's got the much better jiu-jitsu, and his wrestling's not that bad. It's gotten much better. Right, but on the feet, he's a little bit more labored to me, but he's got power. He's much more dangerous than Gamrot on the feet. Gamrot, what we've seen, if you can hit him clean, he's definitely chinny. You can wobble him, you can hurt him. I feel like maybe Charles wins this one by a decision. For right now, early lean, I'm going to say Charles Oliveira by a decision, but I could see him finding a submission, man, because if you want to sit there for 25 minutes and Gamrot's going to, say he just goes in there and stands with Charles, which that's not probably going to happen, Charles outstrikes him and hurts him and probably gets him out of there. Or you want to just grapple and get into all these grappling exchanges with Charles and just feel like you're just over the course of 25 minutes staying safe for that long. I feel like that's a tall order, man. I feel like it is. We saw Chandler do it. Gamrot is better than Chandler. So in terms of the grappling, right, Chandler's more dangerous on the feet. But Gamrot, he's got some sneaky striking at times, right? Not the most worrisome guy. But I'm going to say Charles Oliveira by decision. I could see him finding a submission. Like I said, you want to grapple with him for an extended period of time. I could see, problems ensuing. And then Charles has the advantage on the feet. He's much better on the feet here. But don't sleep on Gamrot, man. Like I said, early pick, I'm going Charles Oliveira. But I'm going to have to watch some more film, man. Because Gamrot, that hooker fight, it was crazy. His pace that he brings, I could see Charles accepting some of these positions and losing minutes to where Gamrot can get ahead, secure some takedowns. How does Charles work back to his feet? Does that wear on Charles, make him tired? It's an interesting matchup, man, stylistically. I'm super excited for this one. Like I said, this is a hardcore fans type of main event. Well earned from Mateusz Gamrot. Shout out to Charles Oliveira for taking this fight. Shout out to Gamrot for stepping up and the UFC for making this thing happen, because everyone's not always willing to step in on short notice and take this kind of risk. So shout out to everybody for making this one happen. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know who you think is going to get this one done. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.